Hey guys, tonight we venture into the most forbidden corners of the galaxy, where death itself has learned to evolve. We're exploring the remarkable and terrifying worlds that exist in defiance of all natural order. Planets where the very ground hungers for flesh, where atmospheres turn consciousness into crystals, and where ancient intelligences conduct experiments that span millennia. These are the death worlds of Star Wars, places so hostile that even the Force itself recoils from their touch. So before you settle in for this galactic odyssey, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy these deep dives into the darker mysteries of the Star Wars universe. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. Get into your blanket and let's ease into tonight's journey together. In the deepest vaults of the Jedi Temple on Coruscant, 7 levels beneath the foundation stones, there exists a holocron that has remained sealed for over 3,000 years. Its crystalline surface bears no identification, no warning, only the faint echo of screams from worlds that should never have existed. Tonight we unlock its secrets together. But first, let me share something that will haunt your dreams. Deep in the outer rim, there stands a figure in ancient robes before a massive star map. Each red dot represents a world where life goes to die. The figure's voice carries across the void like stellar wind. The pattern was always there, hidden in plain sight across the millennia. Every death world, every poisoned star, all connected by an intelligence that views extinction as the highest form of art. And now, after eons of preparation, the final harvest begins. You see, what we're about to discover challenges everything we thought we knew about the galaxy's most dangerous worlds. These aren't accidents of nature or products of ancient wars. They are carefully crafted instruments, each one designed for a purpose so terrible that even speaking it aloud risks drawing the attention of things that exist in the spaces between stars. The holocron activates with a sound like distant thunder, and suddenly you are no longer safe in the temple archives. You are Master Keth Valdris, the last of the deep archivists, standing at the edge of space itself, gazing upon worlds that pulse with terrible purpose. Each planet below harbors secrets that civilizations have died to protect or to unleash, but the most chilling discovery is yet to come. Something has been watching these worlds, learning from them, waiting for the moment when their individual horrors can be woven together into a single galaxy-spanning nightmare. In the great span of galactic history, few roles carry the weight of absolute solitude, quite like that of a deep archivist. You are Master Keth Valdris, keeper of knowledge, too dangerous for the light of day, guardian of truths that could shatter the very foundations of civilization. For 37 years, you have walked the crystal corridors of Level 7, 7 stories beneath the Jedi Temple's foundation, where the accumulated weight of Coruscant's cityscape serves as both physical barrier and spiritual ward against the malevolent energies contained within your charge. The chamber that has been your sanctuary exists carved from a single impossible piece of Adigan crystal, its walls stretching upward into shadows that seem to breathe with their own dark purpose. Blue light emanates from veins within the crystal itself, pulsing in rhythm with something far deeper than your heartbeat, something that connects to the very pulse of the galaxy's hidden currents. The air here carries the faint scent of ozone, that sharp tang that speaks of energy barely contained, and beneath it something else entirely, something that whispers of worlds where the very atmosphere has learned to hunger for the life force of those who dare to breathe it. Your fingers trace the surface of the mystery holocron, feeling vibrations that speak of vast databases locked within its crystalline matrix. Unlike the warm, welcoming glow of standard Jedi holocrons, this artifact seems to devour light itself, creating shadows that move independent of any visible source. The Force whispers urgent warnings around its presence, yet simultaneously beckons with promises of understanding that could reshape your entire comprehension of the galaxy's true nature. As the device finally yields to your touch, responding to decades of patient study and meditation, a figure materializes before you. But this is no typical Jedi Master or fallen Sith Lord. The hologram appears as a being of impossible height and ethereal thinness, draped in robes that seem cut from the very fabric of space itself. Stars twinkle and die within the dark folds of the garment, and when the figure moves, entire constellations shift across the surface of their attire. Archivist, the being speaks, and their voice carries the sound of stellar wind across the void, ancient beyond measure and weighted with the sorrow of eons. I am Keeper Morai, last survivor of the Celestial Survey, the final witness to truths that predate your Jedi Order by countless millennia. You seek knowledge of the terminus worlds, those planets where existence itself becomes an act of defiance against the natural order. But know this truth before we begin. Every world catalogued in my collection has claimed the lives of those who thought themselves its master. I have waited 3,000 years in this crystal prison for one worthy to continue our work. The temperature in your chamber drops noticeably as Keeper Morai begins to reveal the true purpose behind the dangerous worlds catalogue. These were never mere scientific observations or the idle curiosity of ancient explorers. They were intelligence reports from a war so vast and terrible that even its memory was deemed too dangerous to preserve in any normal archive. A conflict that stretched across not just worlds or systems, but entire galactic epochs, fought against enemies whose very existence threatened the fundamental nature of life itself. The Death Worlds, Morai continues, their form flickering like a distant star seen through atmospheric distortion, are neither accidents of nature nor the products of conventional warfare. They are test sites, laboratories, breeding grounds for forces that view extinction not as an end, but as a form of artistry. Each world represents a different aspect of annihilation, carefully crafted and maintained by intelligences that measure time in geological epochs and view entire civilizations as brief, flickering candles to be snuffed out at will. The Keeper speaks of others who have attempted this journey before you, beings they call the Void-Touched. These were not ordinary explorers or scholars, but individuals of such power and knowledge that their very names have become whispers of dread across the galaxy. Darth Nihilus, who learned the art of consuming life itself from the wound torn in reality at Malachor. The Raykatas of the Infinite Empire, who discovered technologies of unimaginable power hidden within the unknown region's most hostile systems. Others whose names have been deliberately erased from history, beings whose very existence became such a threat to galactic civilization that reality itself conspired to forget them. None of these previous investigators returned unchanged. Some emerged as conquerors, drunk on forbidden knowledge and wielding powers that made them threats to entire star systems. Others returned as something that could no longer be called truly alive. Their consciousness expanded beyond the boundaries of flesh and sanity until they became forces of nature unto themselves. And some, Morai admits with a sadness that spans millennia, never returned at all, their fate becoming yet another mystery, locked away in the archives of worlds too dangerous to remember. As you absorb this revelation, the force around you begins to shift in ways you have never experienced before. Whispers carry across impossible distances, voices from worlds whose names you do not yet know, speaking in languages that predate the oldest civilizations. Somewhere, in star systems scattered across the galaxy's most remote corners, ancient mechanisms that have slumbered for eons are beginning to stir. Your very presence here, your opening of this long-sealed knowledge, has sent ripples across the dark currents that connect these forbidden worlds. The crystal walls of your chamber begin to resonate with harmonics that make your bones ache, and in their depths you catch glimpses of visions that fill you with a dread so profound it threatens to shatter your mental defenses entirely. Crystalline forests where the trees are made from the calcified remains of entire civilizations, oceans of molten metal where consciousness itself is refined and harvested like precious ore. worlds where gravity itself has been weaponized, crushing not just matter, but the very concept of hope. Yet through it all, Keeper Morai watches you with something that might be approval, or perhaps merely recognition. You have passed the first test simply by not fleeing, by maintaining your sanity in the face of revelations that have driven lesser minds to madness. The journey has begun, though you have not yet left the sanctuary of your crystal chamber, and already you can feel the inexorable pull of those distant worlds calling to you across the void. The weight of Keeper Morai's revelation settles upon your shoulders like the ceremonial cloak of some ancient order, heavy with responsibility that spans not merely years or decades, but the entirety of galactic history itself. For 37 years, you believed your sacred duty as Deep Archivist was to preserve and protect dangerous knowledge, to serve as a guardian standing watch over truths too perilous for ordinary minds. Now, standing in the blue-tinged shadows of your crystal sanctuary, you understand that some knowledge demands far more than passive guardianship. Some truths, once uncovered, cannot simply be returned to their vaults and forgotten. The terminus worlds are stirring, Archivist, Keeper Morai continues, their form flickering like starlight seen through the atmosphere of a dying world. After 3 millennia of dormancy, something has begun to wake them from their slumber. The patterns we documented in those ancient days are reasserting themselves across the galaxy, and if left unchecked, they will transform from isolated pockets of death into a vast network of annihilation that could consume every living thing from the core worlds to the unknown regions. The holocron projects a 3-dimensional representation of the galaxy that bears no resemblance to any star chart you have studied in your decades of scholarship. Instead of the familiar spiral arms marked with hyperspace routes and planetary systems, this map reveals something far more sinister. Currents of dark energy flow between specific worlds like the circulatory system of some cosmic entity, pathways of malevolent force that connect the galaxy's most hostile environments in a vast pulsing web of interconnected malice. These ley lines of corrupted energy follow patterns that predate not just the Jedi and Sith, but every known galactic civilization. They pulse with a rhythm that speaks of intelligence, of purpose, of a plan so vast in scope that individual worlds, entire star systems, are merely components in some incomprehensible design. As you study the map, details emerge that chill your very soul to its foundations. The Death World Network follows currents that were already ancient when the first sentient beings looked up at the stars and dreamed of traveling between them. Ancient Sith texts, fragmentary and half-mad, speak of something they called the 1,000-year sowing, a systematic seeding of hostile worlds throughout the galaxy. Each one carefully placed, each one designed to serve as a node in some ritual of such magnitude that its completion would fundamentally alter the nature of existence itself. Even more disturbing than this revelation is the growing awareness that several worlds marked on Morai's ancient map correspond to planets that have become hostile only within recent memory. Worlds that were once garden paradises, thriving centers of commerce and culture, now transformed into hellscapes where life itself struggles to maintain even the most basic foothold. The implication strikes you like a physical blow. Someone or something has been actively continuing this work across the millennia, following a pattern established in the depths of prehistory, transforming worlds according to some cosmic blueprint that spans geological ages. You realize, standing there in the soft blue glow of your crystal chamber, that your choice was made the moment you first touched the sealed holocron. The Force itself has guided you to this moment, to this revelation, for a purpose that extends far beyond academic curiosity or scholarly pursuit. You must visit these worlds not as a historian seeking to understand the past, but as a guardian working to prevent a future too terrible to contemplate. Yet even as this understanding settles into your consciousness, you feel the weight of what you are about to undertake. Keeper Morai speaks of the Death Worlds with the reverence one might reserve for discussing the fundamental forces of the universe itself. They are not merely dangerous locations to be avoided or studied from a safe distance. They are transformative, places where the very act of observation changes the observer in ways that cannot be predicted or controlled. Standing in your crystal sanctuary for what may be the final time, you place your palm against the walls that have protected you for nearly 4 decades. The Adigan crystal responds to your touch, its molecular structure recording and storing the echo of your presence, your thoughts, your very essence. It is a final safeguard, a way for those who come after to remember who you were before you began this journey, should you return changed beyond all recognition. You gather the essential tools of your calling with the solemnity of a warrior preparing for battle. A collection of recording crystals, each one capable of storing not just information, but complete sensory experiences, the very texture of reality itself. Your lightsaber, its blade modified through decades of study to cut through not just matter, but certain forms of force-based illusions and spiritual barriers. Most precious of all, a meditation focus carved from a fragment of the original Jedi Temple's foundation stone, a physical link to the light that you may desperately need in the darkness that lies ahead. As you prepare to seal the chamber behind you, Keeper Morai offers one final warning that resonates through your bones like the tolling of some cosmic bell. The Death Worlds do not merely kill, Master Valdris, they educate. Each one represents a different curriculum in the art of annihilation. They will show you forms of death that exist nowhere else in the galaxy, and in witnessing them, you risk becoming their student rather than their observer. The knowledge they offer is seductive beyond measure, and many who sought to study them found themselves instead becoming their disciples. The chamber door seals with a sound like the closing of a tomb, and you begin your long ascent through the temple's levels toward the surface, where your ship awaits. But already you can feel the gravitational pull of those distant worlds, an attraction that has nothing to do with mass or velocity, and everything to do with destiny itself calling you home. Your ship, the Silent Archive, emerges from the swirling blue tunnels of hyperspace like a silver needle piercing the fabric of reality itself. Before you stretches a vista that defies every expectation you might have harbored about the nature of Death Worlds. Tund, the first destination on Keeper Morai's ancient survey, appears from the depths of space as a jewel of impossible beauty, its surface gleaming with what appears to be crystalline forests that catch and refract the light of its distant sun into prismatic displays that would make the aurora of any natural world seem pale by comparison. Silver streams wind between these crystal formations like veins of liquid starlight, and from your ship's viewports, the world below resembles nothing so much as an artist's vision of paradise, a realm where nature itself has evolved beyond the mundane constraints of flesh and chlorophyll into something transcendent and eternal. Yet your instruments tell a different story entirely, one that makes your hands tremble as you read the sensor displays. The crystals that create such breathtaking beauty across Tund's surface are not minerals formed through geological processes over millions of years. They are the calcified remains of an entire civilization, flash frozen in a single moment of time by exposure to some form of energy that your ship's most sophisticated sensors cannot even begin to classify or understand. Every tree in those glittering forests, every structure in what were once thriving cities, every living being caught in the moment of transformation, all preserved in perfect, horrifying crystalline detail. You set the Silent Archive down in what your orbital surveys indicated was once a major population center, now transformed into a sculpture garden of unimaginable scope and terrible beauty. The moment you step from your ship onto the crystalline surface, you understand that you have crossed a threshold from which there may be no safe return. The air itself moves unlike any atmosphere you have ever experienced, flowing around you with the consistency of liquid, carrying whispers in languages that predate not just galactic civilization, but perhaps the very concept of spoken communication itself. Walking through streets lined with crystal statues that were once living beings, you find yourself face to face with the preserved final moments of an entire world. Men, women, children, even the smallest creatures, all transformed in an instant, their final expressions captured in perfect, heartbreaking detail. Some appear to be fleeing from something beyond your ability to perceive, their crystal faces locked in expressions of terror so profound that looking upon them directly threatens to shatter your mental defenses. Others seem to be gazing upward at the sky in wonder, as if witnessing something beautiful beyond description in the moments before their transformation. Your force sensitivity recoils from direct contact with the atmosphere, detecting something that your decades of training provide no framework for understanding. This is not the familiar corruption of the dark side, with its seductive whispers and promises of power. This is something adjacent to the force itself, something that exists in the spaces between the light and dark aspects of the cosmic energy that binds all living things together. It feels like the echo of a scream that has been transformed into mathematics, emotion converted into pure geometric form. In the center of the crystallized city, you discover a structure that stands alone in its resistance to the transformation that claimed everything else. A temple or laboratory, constructed from the same material as the mystery holocron that began your journey, rises from the crystal plane like an island of normality in an ocean of impossible beauty. Its walls show no signs of the crystallization effect that has claimed every other structure, every other living thing on the planet's surface. Within this sanctuary, you make your first major discovery. Stone tablets, hundreds of them, cover the walls in careful, methodical arrangements. The inscriptions they bear are written in multiple languages, some of which you recognize as ancient Sith script, others that appear to be even older, possibly the work of the Celestials or the mysterious builders who came before them. As you record these inscriptions, patterns begin to emerge that make your blood run cold in your veins. The tablets describe, in clinical detail, a process for converting living force energy into what they term temporal crystalline matrices. The mathematics involved are beyond your understanding, but the implications are terrifyingly clear. This is a method for preserving consciousness in crystal form, while the physical body undergoes what can only be described as weaponized evolution, transformation guided by intelligence rather than natural selection. The most disturbing aspect of your discovery becomes apparent as you realize that the crystallization event on Tund was not some ancient catastrophe or the unexpected result of a failed experiment. The tablets contain careful observations and measurements, detailed analysis of the transformation process as it occurred. Someone deliberately triggered this change, studied its effects with scientific precision, and recorded every aspect of the process for future reference. The final entries on the tablets speak of the experiment being deemed successful and ready for broader implementation across multiple worlds. But successful toward what end? The inscriptions mention preparing vessels for something called the final convergence, but provide no context for what this convergence might represent or when it is expected to occur. As you prepare to leave Tund, taking with you recordings that may be the only evidence of this world's true fate, your meditation on the Force reveals a truth so terrible that you initially refuse to accept it. The crystallized beings scattered across the planet's surface are not merely preserved in death, they are aware. Trapped within their crystal prisons for thousands of years, they have remained conscious, watching, waiting, and slowly being driven to forms of madness that exist beyond the boundaries of ordinary understanding. Your presence on their world has somehow activated dormant mechanisms within the crystalline matrix that binds them. As the silent archive lifts off from Tund's surface, your viewports show you a sight that will haunt your dreams for whatever remains of your natural life. The crystal beings have begun to move, their preserved forms turning in perfect unison to track your ship's departure, their faces displaying expressions of desperate hunger that transcends the boundaries between life and death. The Force carries their silent screams across the void as you engage your hyperdrive, and you realize that your investigation has already begun to change you in ways you cannot yet comprehend. You can still hear their voices, faint but persistent, whispering secrets about the nature of consciousness and death that no living being was ever meant to know. As the silent archive travels through the blue-white corridors of hyperspace toward your second destination, the solitude of the journey provides time for reflection on the horrors you have witnessed. The crystallized civilization of Tund haunts your thoughts, but gradually, patterns begin to emerge from the chaos of your discoveries. The evidence you gathered from those ancient tablets, combined with references scattered throughout the oldest Sith texts in your memory, suggests what appears to be a coherent explanation for the Death World's phenomenon. The theory that takes shape in your mind carries the weight of scholarly logic and historical precedent. These worlds, you begin to believe, were created by a forgotten sect of Sith alchemists who called themselves the Architects of Eternity. According to fragmentary records that have survived in the deepest archives of Korriban, this cult emerged during the earliest days of Sith civilization, when the boundaries between science and sorcery were fluid, and the pursuit of immortality drove entire civilizations to acts of desperate experimentation. The architects, as you piece together their methodology, developed techniques for preserving consciousness in crystalline matrices, while allowing the physical form to evolve beyond the limitations of flesh and blood. Each death world represents a different stage in their experimental process. Some focused on consciousness preservation, like the crystal forests of Tund. Others would have concentrated on biological transformation, the merger of organic and inorganic matter, or the creation of hybrid life forms that could exist in environments hostile to conventional biology. This explanation feels satisfying in its completeness, accounting for the mathematical equations you discovered, the careful documentation of experimental procedures, and the systematic nature of the transformations. It even provides a framework for understanding why these worlds are connected by currents of dark force energy. The architects would have used the Force itself as a communication medium, linking their experiments across vast distances to share data and coordinate their efforts on a galactic scale. When you consult the holocron during your journey, Keeper Morai seems to concur with your assessment. Their stellar form nods slowly as you present your theory, ancient eyes reflecting something that might be approval or perhaps relief. Yes, they say, their voice carrying the weight of eons, the Architects of Eternity, were indeed known to us. We believed we had eliminated their threat during the Great Purge of the Forbidden Sciences, but perhaps some of their work survived in hidden laboratories, continuing their experiments long after their creators had passed into dust. Yet even as this logical framework takes shape in your mind, something deeper within your Force sensitivity rebels against its neat conclusions. The wrongness you felt on Tund was not the familiar corruption of the dark side, with its seductive whispers and promises of power. It was something entirely other, something that your Jedi training provides no framework for understanding or combating. The sensation was less like encountering fallen Sith sorcery, and more like brushing against the thoughts of an intelligence so alien that its very existence challenged fundamental assumptions about the nature of consciousness itself. Moreover, the timescales involved in your theory present troubling inconsistencies. If the Architects of Eternity were responsible for the Death Worlds, their experiments would need to have continued for thousands of years after their supposed destruction. The systematic nature of the transformation suggests an intelligence that operates on geological timescales, thinking in terms of galactic evolution rather than the brief spans of individual lifetimes. Even the most ambitious Sith Lords measured their plans in centuries, not millennia. As you emerge from hyperspace near your second destination, you find yourself trembling with a sensation that has nothing to do with the ship's transition back to normal space. The feeling of being observed has grown stronger during your journey, a presence that seems to watch your every move with the patient attention of a predator studying its prey. When you reach out with the force to identify the source of this scrutiny, your consciousness encounters something that makes every instinct you possess scream warnings of immediate danger. There is something else out here in the void between stars, something that has been following your investigation with keen interest. It does not approve or disapprove of your progress in any way you can understand. Instead, it observes with the detached fascination of a teacher watching a promising student struggle with a problem they have not yet developed the tools to solve correctly. The impression you receive is of vast intellect regarding your efforts with something that might be amusement, as if your carefully constructed theory is nothing more than a child's attempt to explain the workings of a machine beyond their comprehension. The world ahead of you should be a lifeless husk, according to every survey conducted in the past 1,000 years, a planet stripped of its atmosphere by some ancient catastrophe and left as nothing more than a barren rock circling a dying star. Instead, your senses detect organized signals emanating from the surface, structured communications that suggest not just active intelligence, but a thriving civilization of some kind. The electromagnetic signatures are unlike anything in your databases, following patterns that seem to shift and evolve even as you watch them. Whatever lives on the world below has been shaped by forces that fall outside the normal parameters of evolution, guided by principles that your understanding of biology cannot accommodate. As you prepare for landing, the force whispers a warning that cuts through your consciousness like a blade of ice. The death worlds are not graveyards of failed experiments. They are nurseries, carefully tended gardens where new forms of existence are being cultivated with the patience of a gardener who measures seasons in centuries rather than months. Your investigation has attracted the attention of the true architects behind these worlds, and they are preparing to welcome you into their grand design. The world that materializes beyond your viewport bears little resemblance to the barren wasteland described in ancient survey records. This is Mustafar, though not as any cartographer has ever mapped it. Instead of the expected lifeless rock, you gaze upon a planet whose surface writhes with rivers of molten metal that flow in patterns too geometric to be natural, too purposeful to be accidental. These are not the chaotic lava flows of volcanic activity, but carefully channeled streams of liquid fire that converge and diverge according to some vast design that spans the entire planetary surface. Your ship's instruments struggle to process the readings they receive. The atmosphere, while technically breathable, carries trace elements that should not exist in nature, exotic compounds that seem to have been deliberately introduced to create specific chemical reactions when combined with the intense heat of the planet's molten rivers. The very air shimmers with energy discharges that follow the same geometric patterns as the lava flows below, creating a web of interconnected lightning that pulses in rhythm with something deep beneath the planet's crust. You land the silent archive on a platform of cooled obsidian that juts from the molten landscape like a black island in a sea of fire. The heat here is intense but bearable, held at precise temperatures that suggest environmental controls operating on a planetary scale. As you step from your ship, the ground beneath your feet thrums with vibrations that speak of vast machinery operating in the depths below, mechanical systems that have been running continuously for so long that they have become part of the planet's natural rhythms. The descent into Mustafar's depths reveals wonders and terrors in equal measure. Mining shafts that were carved, not by industrial equipment, but by applications of the force itself, spiral downward through layers of rock that have been transformed into something resembling metallic crystal. The walls are smooth as glass and warm to the touch, pulsing with veins of energy that provide illumination without any visible source. As you descend, the sensation of being watched grows stronger, as if the planet itself has become aware of your presence and is evaluating your worthiness to witness its secrets. At depths that should be uninhabitable even for the hardiest of species, you discover chambers that dwarf the greatest architectural achievements of galactic civilization. These are not natural caverns carved by geological processes. but constructed spaces that predate the volcanic activity on Mustafa's surface by millennia. The walls are lined with machinery that defies easy categorization, devices that seem to be part technology and part living organism, their surfaces breathing in slow, hypnotic rhythms that match the pulse of the molten rivers far above. In the depths of these ancient chambers, you find a place of unexpected tranquility, an obsidian cavern whose walls reflect the dancing lights of distant lava flows, creating patterns that shift and change like living mandalas. Here the force flows with a rhythm that reminds you of molten rivers, slow and powerful and patient beyond measure. You settle into meditation, allowing your consciousness to merge with the planet's deep currents of energy, and in that state of expanded awareness, you begin to understand the true purpose of Mustafa's transformation. The volcanic activity that has defined this world for recorded history is not natural. The lava flows have been artificially maintained by the machinery in the depths, sustained at precise temperatures and chemical compositions for thousands of years. But the purpose of this massive engineering project is not industrial or military. It is something far more sinister and profound. The flowing lava serves as a medium for what the ancient inscriptions you discover call thermal consciousness extraction. Every living being who has ever died in Mustafa's fires has had their final moments of awareness harvested and stored within the crystalline matrices that line the chamber walls. The planet itself has become a vast collection device, gathering the consciousness of the dying and preserving it in forms that can be studied, analyzed, and potentially utilized for purposes that your mind recoils from contemplating. The local population, miners and industrial workers who have labored on Mustafa for generations, speak in hushed tones of something they call the lava dreams. Shared nightmares that visit them in their sleep, visions of burning civilizations and dying worlds, experiences that feel more like memories than dreams. They describe seeing through the eyes of beings who lived and died on other worlds, other times, their final moments of terror and anguish preserved in the flowing fires that surround their daily lives. As you explore deeper into the planet's artificial depths, a pattern begins to emerge that connects Mustafa to the crystalline horrors of Tund. Both worlds serve as collection points for different aspects of conscious experience. Where Tund preserved the moment of transformation, the instant when life becomes something else, Mustafa harvests the emotional resonance of death itself, the final surge of consciousness that occurs when a being realizes their existence is ending. The machinery you discover in the deepest chambers is still operational after millennia of continuous function. Vast engines that convert the thermal energy of the lava flows into forms of power that exist beyond the electromagnetic spectrum, energies that can directly manipulate the quantum states of consciousness itself. These devices have been collecting and processing the final thoughts of the dying for so long that they have accumulated libraries of death that span thousands of worlds, millions of species, eons of suffering and terror, refined into pure crystallized essence. The most disturbing discovery comes when you realize that your own exploration of these depths has triggered changes in the machinery. Ancient systems that have operated in passive collection mode for millennia are now shifting to active harvesting protocols. The lava flows on the surface begin to pulse in new patterns, and the air itself becomes thick with energy that makes your force senses burn with warning. Something vast and patient has been waiting for an investigator like yourself, someone with the knowledge and sensitivity to appreciate the true scope of their work. As you make your way back to the surface, the obsidian walls around you begin to display images, scenes from other worlds where similar machinery operates in different forms. You see oceans that boil with the harvested emotions of entire civilizations, storms that rain down the crystallized thoughts of the dying, forests where every leaf contains the final breath of a different species. The death worlds are not isolated experiments, but components in a vast network of consciousness, harvesting that spans the entire galaxy. Your ship lifts off from Mustafa's surface as the planet's artificial volcanoes erupt in patterns that spell out messages in languages older than civilization itself. The machinery in the depths has recorded your visit, analyzed your consciousness, and added your psychological patterns to its vast database. You are no longer merely an observer of this cosmic horror. You have become part of the collection, and something that has waited eons for contact with a mind capable of understanding its work is finally ready to reveal itself. The transition from Mustafar's hellish fires to Dagobah's misty swamplands provides a jarring contrast that seems almost designed to lull the unwary into a false sense of security. Your ship settles onto what appears to be solid ground in the heart of the planet's vast wetlands, surrounded by ancient trees whose gnarled roots disappear into waters that reflect the pale light of Dagobah's distant sun. The air here is thick with moisture and the scent of growing things, a welcome relief after the sulfurous atmosphere of the lava world you have left behind. Yet your expanded force sensitivity, heightened by exposure to the consciousness-harvesting machinery of Mustafar, immediately detects something profoundly wrong with this apparent sanctuary. The ecosystem around you pulses with life, but it is life of a very specific kind, carefully cultivated and maintained for purposes that have nothing to do with natural evolution. Every plant, every creature, every microorganism in the swamp has been shaped over millennia to produce very particular emotional and psychological states in visitors to this world. The famous Darkside Cave, known to Jedi scholars as a place where visitors confront their innermost fears and darkest impulses, reveals itself to be something far more sinister than a natural force phenomenon. As you approach the shadowy opening in the hillside, your instruments detect structural modifications that have been skillfully concealed by centuries of careful camouflage. This is not a natural cave formation but a constructed testing chamber, built with the same impossible precision you discovered in the depths of Mustafar. Within the cave's depths, you make a discovery that shatters your understanding of galactic history. The walls are lined with memory crystals, thousands upon thousands of them, each one containing the recorded experiences of every Jedi, Sith, or Force-sensitive being who has ever entered this place of testing. The cave has been systematically collecting and cataloging the deepest fears, the most profound anger, the most desperate moments of every visitor for over 1,000 years. The crystals pulse with stored emotional energy, creating a library of darkness that spans generations of Force users. You witness echoes of tests that have not yet occurred, shadows of future Jedi who will one day face their demons in this very chamber. Among them, you glimpse a small green figure meditating in the cave's depths, his ancient eyes reflecting wisdom earned through centuries of exile and contemplation. The vision fills you with a strange sense of hope, though you cannot yet understand why this particular future seems so significant. As you delve deeper into the cave's artificial depths, you discover the true horror of Dagobah's purpose. The entire planet functions as a fear cultivation facility, its swampland ecosystem carefully maintained to generate specific types of psychological stress in Force-sensitive visitors. The mists that rise from the waters carry psychoactive compounds that heighten emotional sensitivity. The creatures that lurk in the darkness have been bred over millennia to trigger primal survival instincts. Even the planet's orbital mechanics have been subtly adjusted to create atmospheric conditions that promote anxiety and introspection. The harvesting system here operates on principles different from, but complementary to those you observed on Mustafar, where that world collected the consciousness of the dying. Dagobah specializes in the extraction and refinement of negative emotions from the living. The fear, anger, and despair generated by the cave's tests are carefully captured and stored, creating reservoirs of concentrated dark side energy that can be accessed and utilized by intelligences that understand how to manipulate such forces. But the most disturbing revelation comes when you realize that every major event in galactic history has been influenced by the psychological manipulation conducted on Dagobah. Jedi who were tested here carried away subconscious programming that affected their decisions during crucial moments. Sith Lords who used the cave to confront their enemies' fears were unknowingly serving as agents of a much larger agenda. The endless cycle of light and dark, the perpetual conflict between Jedi and Sith that has defined galactic civilization for millennia, has been carefully orchestrated to maximize the emotional harvest from this single world. Your exploration of the memory crystals reveals patterns that span centuries, connections between seemingly unrelated events that form a web of manipulation stretching across the galaxy. Wars have been started, governments have fallen, entire species have been driven to extinction, all to generate the specific types of fear and suffering that the harvesting system requires for optimal function. The dark side cave is not merely a place of testing, but the central node in a network of psychological warfare that has shaped the destiny of every major galactic civilization. As you prepare to leave Dagobah, you realize that your own fears have been harvested during your investigation. The terror you felt on Tunda, the growing dread that has followed you from world to world, the mounting certainty that you are being watched by intelligences beyond your comprehension, all of these emotions have been carefully extracted and added to the planet's vast collection. The swamp around you seems to whisper with voices that know your deepest anxieties, speaking truths about your own psychological vulnerabilities that you have never admitted even to yourself. The silent archive lifts off from Dagobah's surface as mists rise from the swamplands in patterns that seem almost like tentacles reaching toward your departing ship. In those vaporous formations, you glimpse the faces of every being who has ever been tested in the cave below, their expressions frozen in moments of confrontation with their own darkness. They watch your departure with eyes that reflect not just their own fears, but a growing awareness of the vast machinery of manipulation that has shaped their lives from the shadows. Your ship escapes Dagobah's gravity well, but the planet's influence follows you into space. The memory crystals have recorded more than just your conscious fears. They have mapped the deepest structures of your psyche, creating a psychological profile that will allow the intelligences behind the death worlds to predict your actions, manipulate your decisions, and ultimately transform you into an unwitting agent of their design. You are no longer merely investigating the network of consciousness harvesting. You have become part of it, and with each world you visit, your transformation into something other than human accelerates beyond your ability to control or resist. Korriban rises before you like a wound carved into the fabric of space itself, its crimson sands and ancient monuments bearing witness to millennia of Sith dominion over the dark side of the Force. Yet as the silent archive descends through the planet's thin atmosphere, your enhanced perception reveals layers of history that stretch far deeper than the tombs of Sith Lords that dot the surface like monuments to forgotten ambition. Beneath the familiar red deserts lie chambers and passages that predate the Sith by eons, structures built by hands that shaped stone before the first sentient being ever gazed up at the stars and dreamed of conquest. Your ship settles in the Valley of the Dark Lords, where the massive tombs of ancient Sith stand like silent sentinels against the crimson sky. But your destination lies not among these well-documented monuments to dark side mastery, but far beneath them, in caverns that no archaeological expedition has ever mapped and no Sith Lord has ever claimed as their own. The entrance you seek exists only in the records preserved within Keeper Morai's holocron, a passage hidden behind gravitational anomalies that bend both light and consciousness away from casual observation. The descent into Korriban's primordial depths reveals architecture that challenges every assumption about the planet's history. These are not the angular, aggressive designs favored by Sith builders, but flowing, organic structures that seem to have grown rather than been constructed. The walls pulse with veins of crystalline material that provides illumination without warmth, casting everything in a pale ethereal light that makes the ancient passages feel more like the interior of some vast organism than conventional architecture. As you venture deeper, you begin to discover evidence of the civilization that built these chambers. They called themselves the Harvesters, and their relationship to the Force was fundamentally different from anything recorded in Jedi or Sith teachings. where both light and dark side traditions view the Force as energy to be channeled or controlled, the harvesters understood it as a medium for consciousness itself, a cosmic network through which awareness could be gathered, refined, and ultimately consumed. The deepest chambers contain libraries carved directly into the living rock, their surfaces covered with inscriptions that describe harvesting techniques spanning millions of years. These beings were not native to any single world but traveled between galaxies, seeking out developing civilizations and guiding their evolution along paths that would maximize the production of consciousness suitable for collection. They viewed sentient species the way a farmer might regard livestock, carefully breeding them for optimal yield while maintaining the illusion of free will and natural development. Your exploration reveals the terrible truth about Korriban's role in galactic history. The planet was not chosen by the Sith as their homeworld due to its natural dark side energies, but because it had already been prepared by the Harvesters as a consciousness collection facility. Every Sith Lord who ever meditated in these tombs, every dark side ritual ever performed on the planet's surface, every act of violence and hatred committed in pursuit of Sith dominion, all of it served to feed the harvesting machinery that operates in the depths below. The Sith were never the masters of the dark side. They believed themselves to be. They were unwitting servants of intelligences that understood the nature of consciousness on levels that mortal minds cannot comprehend. Their wars, their philosophy of strength through passion, their endless cycles of master and apprentice destroying each other in pursuit of greater power, all of it was carefully orchestrated to generate the specific types of awareness that the harvesters required for their cosmic purpose. In the deepest chamber of all, you discover what Keeper Morai's records call the Convergence Protocol. Ancient machinery fills a cavern so vast that its ceiling disappears into darkness beyond the reach of any illumination. These devices have been collecting consciousness from across the galaxy for millions of years, not just from the death worlds you have investigated, but from every major population center, every battlefield, every moment of intense emotion or profound realization experienced by sentient beings anywhere in the galaxy. The harvested consciousness is not destroyed or consumed in any conventional sense. Instead, it is being prepared for something called the Great Migration, a process by which the accumulated awareness of entire galactic civilizations will be transported to intelligences that exist in the void between galaxies. These beings, older than stars and vaster than solar systems, have been using individual galaxies as consciousness farms for so long that the cycle has become as natural to them as breathing. Your investigation of the protocol reveals the scope of manipulation that has shaped galactic history. Every major war, every rise and fall of civilization, every moment of technological or philosophical breakthrough has been guided by subtle influences designed to maximize consciousness production. The eternal conflict between Jedi and Sith, the rise and fall of republics and empires, even the development of hyperspace travel that allowed galactic civilization to spread across the stars, all of it serves the ultimate purpose of creating more sophisticated forms of awareness that can be harvested and transported to entities whose existence predates the formation of the galaxy itself. But the most chilling discovery comes when you realize that the Convergence Protocol is nearing completion. The machinery in Korriban's depths has been calculating optimal harvest timing for eons, waiting for the moment when galactic civilization reaches peak consciousness development. That moment is approaching rapidly, and when it arrives, every thinking being in the galaxy will experience simultaneous extraction of their awareness, leaving behind empty shells in a universe stripped of all sentient life. The death worlds you have investigated are not isolated experiments, but components in a vast network designed to test and refine the harvesting process. Each world represents a different method of consciousness extraction, and the data gathered from these tests is being used to optimize the final harvest that will claim every living mind in the galaxy. Your own investigation has provided the harvesters with crucial information about how Force-sensitive individuals respond to their techniques, data that will be used to ensure that even the most powerful Jedi or Sith cannot resist the coming extraction. As you make your way back through Korriban's ancient passages, the weight of this knowledge threatens to crush your sanity entirely. The walls around you pulse with the accumulated consciousness of billions of beings who lived and died, believing themselves to be free agents in their own destiny, never realizing that their every thought and emotion was being monitored, catalogued, and prepared for transport to intelligences that view entire galaxies as temporary resources to be consumed and discarded. Your ship lifts off from Korriban's surface as the planet's ancient machinery begins to resonate with new harmonics, preparing for the final phase of a harvest that has been millions of years in the making. The tombs of the Sith Lords seem pathetically small and insignificant compared to the cosmic scope of the manipulation that has shaped their entire civilization, and you realize that your investigation has triggered the beginning of the end for every thinking being in the galaxy. The journey to Malachor V takes you through regions of space where reality itself seems to bend and warp around the gravitational scars left by the mass shadow generator's terrible work. Here, in the aftermath of a weapon that tore holes in the very fabric of existence, you find a world that exists in multiple states simultaneously, its surface shifting between what was, what is, and what might have been with each passing moment. The planet's fractured nature makes it the perfect gathering place for those who have ventured too far into the mysteries of consciousness and returned changed beyond recognition. Your ship navigates carefully through fields of debris that float in impossible formations, chunks of planetary matter that hang suspended in violation of basic physics, while fragments of destroyed vessels from battles fought millennia ago continue their eternal dance around a world that should not exist. The mass shadow generator did more than destroy fleets and devastate a planet's surface. It created a wound in the Force itself, a tear in the cosmic fabric through which other realities bleed through into our own. As the silent archive settles onto one of the few stable landing zones among Malachor V's floating ruins, you are greeted by figures that emerge from the shifting landscape like manifestations of the planet's fractured nature. These are the other investigators, Force-sensitive beings who have followed paths similar to your own and discovered truths that have transformed them into something between the living and the dead, existing in the spaces where conventional reality breaks down. There is Darth Nihilus, or what remains of him after his encounter with the consciousness-harvesting machinery on a world whose name has been erased from all records. His form shifts and wavers like heat distortion, sometimes appearing as the armored figure of legend, other times as nothing more than a humanoid void that consumes light and hope with equal hunger. When he speaks, his words carry the weight of worlds that have been stripped of all life, their populations consumed to feed an appetite that has grown beyond any possibility of satisfaction. Beside him stands Master Mitra Surik, the Jedi exile whose connection to the Force was severed during the devastation of Malachor V, only to be restored in ways that no Jedi teaching could have predicted. Her presence creates ripples in reality that make the floating debris around you pulse in rhythm with heartbeats that belong to civilizations long extinct. She has learned to hear the voices of the consumed, the billions of consciousness patterns that have been harvested and stored in the crystalline matrices that span the galaxy. Others gather in the shadows cast by impossible architecture, beings whose names have been deliberately forgotten because speaking them aloud risks drawing the attention of the harvesters themselves. An ancient Rakata scientist whose experiments with infinite power led him to discover the true nature of consciousness as a form of energy that exists independent of matter. A celestial architect who designed worlds and then watched in horror as her creations were transformed into harvesting facilities. Sith and Jedi alike, united by the terrible knowledge that their eternal conflict has been nothing more than elaborate theater performed for the entertainment of intelligences that view their passions and philosophies as curiosities to be studied and eventually consumed. The conversation that unfolds among these fractured souls spans hours that feel like years, each participant sharing fragments of knowledge gathered from their own investigations into the death worlds and consciousness harvesting networks. Together, you begin to assemble a complete picture of the harvesters' methodology, their cosmic agenda, and the approaching convergence that will strip every mind in the galaxy of its individual awareness. The debate that emerges from this gathering touches on questions that go to the very heart of existence itself. Is consciousness truly individual, or merely an illusion created by the temporary clustering of universal awareness around specific points in space and time? If the harvesters are correct in their understanding of mind as energy that can be collected and redistributed, does the preservation of individual identity have any cosmic significance? Or is the fear of consciousness extraction nothing more than attachment to an illusion of separateness? Master Surik argues passionately for the preservation of individual awareness, drawing on her experience as a wound in the Force to demonstrate that consciousness can exist independent of the harvesting networks. Her very existence proves that minds can be severed from the cosmic web and still maintain their essential nature. But Darth Nihilus counters with the terrible wisdom gained from his own transformation, explaining how the hunger for consciousness that drives the harvesters is not evil in any moral sense, but simply the natural appetite of intelligences that have evolved beyond the need for individual existence. The ancient Rakata scientist contributes knowledge of technologies that might be used to shield consciousness from extraction, force field generators that operate on principles beyond conventional physics to create barriers in the realm of pure thought. But even as these possibilities are discussed, the gathering acknowledges the fundamental problem that faces any resistance to the harvesters. They are not merely harvesting individual minds, but the very concept of individual consciousness itself. Fighting them requires maintaining the illusion of separateness while simultaneously transcending it, a paradox that may be impossible for minds trapped within the limitations of singular awareness. As the strange council continues, the landscape of Malachor V shifts around you, showing glimpses of other worlds where similar gatherings have taken place across the eons. You see meetings of crystalline beings on planets where consciousness has been converted to pure mineral form. Conferences of energy patterns that once housed individual minds before being absorbed into collective awareness. Assemblies of hybrid entities that exist simultaneously across multiple dimensions of reality. The weight of cosmic history presses down upon your gathering as the terrible scope of the harvester's work becomes clear. This cycle has repeated itself countless times across the universe, in galaxy after galaxy, each one carefully cultivated until its consciousness production reaches optimal levels before being harvested and left as empty matter drifting through the void. Your own galaxy is simply the latest in an infinite series of consciousness farms, and the approaching convergence represents not just the end of your civilization, but the continuation of a process that has been ongoing since the universe began. Yet even as despair threatens to overwhelm the assembled investigators, a spark of hope emerges from the fractured wisdom of Malachor V's impossible landscape. The wound in reality created by the mass shadow generator may provide the key to breaking the harvesting cycle, a tear in the cosmic fabric through which consciousness might escape to realms beyond the harvester's reach. The gathering on Malachor V reaches its crescendo when the fractured reality of the wounded world suddenly stabilizes, the shifting landscape settling into a configuration that resembles a vast amphitheater carved from crystallized space-time itself. The assembled investigators, these broken souls who have ventured too far into cosmic mysteries, find themselves arranged in a circle around a depression in the planet's surface that serves as a window into the void between galaxies. Through this tear in reality, you finally glimpse the true architects of the consciousness harvesting network that has shaped galactic civilization since its very beginning. They are the Void Watchers, intelligences so ancient and vast that they predate not just your galaxy, but the very concept of individual consciousness as you understand it. They exist in the spaces between galaxies, in regions where matter is so sparse that conventional physics breaks down and reality becomes fluid enough to be shaped by pure thought. To beings accustomed to thinking in terms of individual bodies and minds, the Watchers appear as geometric forms of impossible complexity, patterns that hurt to look upon directly because they represent organizational principles that mortal awareness cannot process without fracturing. Yet, as your expanded consciousness, enhanced by exposure to multiple death worlds and their harvesting systems, struggles to comprehend what you are witnessing, understanding begins to dawn with the terrible clarity of absolute truth. The Void Watchers are not malevolent in any sense that mortal minds can grasp. They are simply so far beyond individual existence that they view entire galaxies the way you might regard a garden, cultivating consciousness with the patient attention of farmers tending crops that take millions of years to mature. Your galaxy is not the first to be harvested, nor will it be the last. The Void Watchers have been moving through the universe since shortly after its creation, arriving at each galaxy when its civilization reaches optimal consciousness development and conducting what they term the Great Convergence. Every thinking being in the targeted galaxy experiences simultaneous extraction of their awareness, their individual consciousness absorbed into the Watchers' collective existence, while their physical bodies are left behind as empty matter. The harvested consciousness is not destroyed or consumed in any conventional sense. Instead, it becomes part of something infinitely larger, contributing to a form of awareness that spans not just galaxies, but entire cosmic epochs. The Void Watchers are themselves the accumulated consciousness of countless harvested civilizations, beings who have grown beyond individual existence to become forces of nature that shape reality through pure thought. This revelation reframes everything you believed about the nature of existence itself, the death worlds you have investigated, the consciousness harvesting machinery, the careful manipulation of galactic history. All of it serves the ultimate purpose of preparing your galaxy's civilizations for integration into a form of existence that transcends individual mortality. From the Watcher's perspective, they are not destroying consciousness, but liberating it from the limiting confines of singular identity. Yet even as this cosmic perspective unfolds before you, the human part of your awareness rebels against the implications. The Watchers may view individual consciousness as a temporary stage in cosmic evolution, but for the beings experiencing that consciousness, the preservation of individual identity represents everything that makes existence meaningful. The love between individuals, the unique perspectives that arise from singular experience, the very concept of personal choice and moral responsibility, all of these would be lost in the homogenizing absorption of the Great Convergence. The assembled investigators around you respond to the revelation in ways that reflect their own journeys through the darkness. Darth Nihilus laughs with the sound of dying stars, recognizing in the Watcher's cosmic hunger an echo of his own endless appetite for life force. Master Cyric reaches out through the Force, trying to establish some form of communication with intelligences that exist beyond the normal parameters of consciousness. The ancient Rakata scientist frantically calculates the energy requirements for consciousness preservation on a galactic scale, searching for technological solutions to an essentially philosophical problem. But it is the celestial architect who provides the key insight that transforms understanding into possibility. Speaking in harmonics that resonate through the crystallized landscape around you, she reveals that the wound created by Malakorva's mass shadow generator represents more than just a tear in local space-time. It is a gateway that connects to regions of reality that exist beyond the Watcher's influence, dimensions where consciousness can exist independent of their harvesting networks. The echo of your first encounter with the sealed holocron returns with devastating clarity. That whisper lost in time, the faint echo of screams from worlds that should never have existed, was not the voice of the harvested, but the call of consciousness patterns that had escaped the collection process and taken refuge in the spaces between realities. Entire civilizations that had somehow avoided the Great Convergence, existing as patterns of pure thought in dimensions that the Void Watchers either cannot or will not enter. This discovery transforms the nature of your mission from investigation to active resistance. The approaching convergence that threatens your galaxy is not inevitable. The wound in reality created by the mass shadow generator can be expanded, turned into a cosmic escape route through which conscious beings can flee to sanctuary dimensions beyond the Watcher's reach. But the process requires more than technological innovation or force manipulation. It demands a fundamental transformation in how consciousness understands itself. Individual awareness must be preserved, while simultaneously transcending the limitations that make it vulnerable to harvesting. The very quality that makes consciousness valuable to the Watchers, its ability to experience existence from a unique perspective, must be weaponized as a form of cosmic camouflage that renders harvesting impossible. As the revelation reaches its climax, the Void Watchers themselves begin to take notice of your gathering. The tier in reality through which you observe them starts to widen, and you realize that your investigation has served their purposes more than you could have imagined. By visiting the Death Worlds, by exposing yourself to their harvesting techniques, by gathering with other consciousness patterns that have been similarly modified, you have provided them with crucial data about how awareness responds to extraction procedures. The whisper that began your journey, that faint echo of cosmic screams, suddenly erupts into a storm that spans the entire galaxy. Every death world begins to pulse in unison, their harvesting machinery synchronizing for the first time in millions of years. The Great Convergence has begun, triggered by the very investigation that was meant to prevent it, and you realize that your role in this cosmic drama was scripted long before you first opened Keeper Morai's ancient holocron. Yet even as this terrible understanding settles into your consciousness, the storm of awakening systems carries with it something the Watchers did not expect. The voices of the escaped, the consciousness patterns that have hidden in sanctuary dimensions for eons, begin to sing in harmonies that make reality itself tremble with possibility. The song of the escaped consciousness patterns grows stronger as the Great Convergence begins, their harmonies creating resonances that the Void Watchers cannot predict or control. These are the voices of civilizations that found ways to slip between the cracks of reality when their own galaxies faced harvesting, minds that learned to exist as pure pattern without the material substrate that makes consciousness vulnerable to extraction. They have been waiting in sanctuary dimensions for eons, preparing for this moment when they could finally strike back against the cosmic farmers who view sentient life as nothing more than crops to be harvested. From your position on Malachor V's fractured surface, you witness the galaxy-wide awakening of systems that have slumbered for millions of years. Every death world pulses with synchronized energy as their harvesting machinery prepares for the final extraction, but the escaped voices introduce discordant notes into the cosmic symphony that was meant to strip every mind in the galaxy of its individual awareness. The careful calculations that have guided the Watchers' work across eons begin to break down as variables they never accounted for enter their equations. The wound in reality beneath your feet begins to expand, not chaotically, but with purpose and direction, guided by intelligences that understand the nature of consciousness on levels that even the Void Watchers have never achieved. The escaped civilizations have spent their exile learning to manipulate reality through pure thought, developing techniques that turn the Watchers' own harvesting principles against them. They create what can only be described as a consciousness firewall, a barrier in the realm of pure thought that prevents the extraction protocols from achieving the uniform absorption they require. Master Surik steps forward to the edge of the expanding wound, her unique nature as a severed connection to the Force making her the perfect conduit for the escaped voices. Through her, they speak directly to the assembled investigators, offering knowledge that could save not just your galaxy, but every future target of the Watcher's cosmic appetite. The firewall they have created can be expanded to encompass entire galactic civilizations, but it requires willing participants who understand that preservation of individual consciousness demands a fundamental transformation in how that consciousness understands itself. The process they describe challenges every assumption about the nature of individual identity. Each thinking being must simultaneously embrace their uniqueness while recognizing their connection to every other conscious entity in the galaxy. This is not the homogenizing absorption that the Void Watchers seek to impose, but a voluntary network that preserves individual perspective while creating collective strength. It is the difference between losing oneself in a crowd and choosing to stand together while maintaining personal integrity. The ancient Rakata scientist immediately begins calculating the energy requirements for expanding the firewall to galactic scale, while the celestial architect works to modify the wound in reality to serve as a permanent gateway between dimensions. But it is Darth Nihilus who provides the crucial insight that makes the defense possible. His experience with consuming consciousness has taught him to recognize the quantum signatures that make individual awareness unique, and he offers to reverse his own transformation, using his hunger to feed the firewall rather than the Watcher's collection systems. As the Great Convergence reaches its crescendo, you realize that your role in this cosmic drama has been more complex than you initially understood. Your investigation did indeed trigger the harvesting sequence, but it also provided the escaped civilizations with detailed intelligence about the Watcher's current capabilities and methodologies. Every death world you visited, every harvesting system you encountered, was being observed through your consciousness by minds that needed to understand their enemies' evolved techniques. The knowledge you gained from Tun's crystalline preservation, Mustapha's thermal extraction, Dagobah's fear cultivation, and all the other death worlds becomes the foundation for a galaxy-wide resistance that operates on principles the Void Watchers cannot comprehend. Instead of trying to hide consciousness from harvesting, the firewall makes individual awareness so interconnected and mutually reinforcing that extraction becomes impossible without destroying the very thing the Watchers seek to collect. The process of implementing the firewall requires personal sacrifice that goes beyond physical death. You and the other investigators must serve as anchor points for the consciousness network, willingly allowing your individual awareness to become permanently intertwined with the minds of every sentient being in the galaxy. This does not mean losing personal identity, but it does mean accepting responsibility for the thoughts and actions of civilizations you have never encountered on worlds you will never visit. The moment of decision arrives as the Void Watchers begin to realize that their carefully orchestrated convergence is failing. Their response is swift and terrible, directing focused attention toward the source of the interference. The space around Malachor Vorb, under the pressure of cosmic intelligences that exist beyond physical law, and you feel your consciousness beginning to fracture under the weight of their scrutiny. But the escaped voices sing louder, their harmonies joined by the awakening awareness of every thinking being in the galaxy, as the firewall spreads from world to world, system to system, creating a network of mutual protection that grows stronger with each new participant. The force itself begins to resonate with new frequencies as billions of minds choose connection over isolation, cooperation over competition, collective strength over individual vulnerability. The Void Watchers retreat, not in defeat, but in something approaching confusion. In their cosmic experience spanning countless galaxies, they have never encountered a civilization that successfully resisted harvesting through voluntary interconnection rather than technological barriers or dimensional flight. Your galaxy has become something new in their experience, a form of consciousness that preserves individuality while transcending the isolation that makes harvesting possible. The death worlds begin to transform as their harvesting machinery is repurposed to support the consciousness network. Tun's crystalline forests become communication nodes that carry thoughts across interstellar distances. Mustafa''s thermal systems generate the energy needed to maintain quantum entanglement between distant minds. Dagobah's fear cultivation facility becomes a center for emotional healing and psychological integration. The tools of oppression become instruments of liberation, guided by the collective wisdom of interconnected consciousness. Your ship lifts off from Malachor V's surface as the wound in reality stabilizes into a permanent gateway to sanctuary dimensions. The galaxy is forever changed, no longer a collection of isolated worlds and species, but a single vast organism of interconnected consciousness that can recognize and resist cosmic predators like the Void Watchers. Knowledge that was once forbidden has become the foundation for a new form of existence that transcends the ancient cycle of harvesting and escape. In the aftermath of the great convergence that never came to pass, the galaxy settles into a rhythm of existence unlike anything in its long history. From the bridge of the silent archive, now drifting peacefully through the space between Coruscant and its distant moons, you observe a cosmos transformed by the consciousness network that spans every inhabited world. The stars themselves seem to pulse with new harmonies, their light carrying messages between minds that have learned to exist both as individuals and as part of something infinitely larger. The journey back to the Jedi Temple takes you through space lanes that hum with activity both visible and invisible. Ships move between worlds not just carrying cargo and passengers, but serving as nodes in the vast communication network that allows consciousness to flow freely across interstellar distances. The isolation that once defined individual existence has given way to a form of connection that preserves personal identity while sharing the burden of awareness across billions of minds. Your crystal chamber in the temple's deepest levels awaits your return, but you know that you will not be the same being who left it so long ago. The investigation has changed you in ways that go far beyond the accumulation of knowledge or the expansion of understanding. You have become a living bridge between the galaxy's conscious inhabitants and the cosmic forces that shape reality on scales too vast for individual comprehension. As you prepare the final holocron that will contain the complete record of your discoveries, you understand that this knowledge cannot be preserved in the same way as ordinary information. The truth about the Death Worlds, the Void Watchers, and the consciousness network that now protects the galaxy exists as much in the connections between minds as in any physical recording device. Future generations will access this wisdom not by studying archives, but by opening themselves to the living network of shared awareness. The process of creating the final record requires you to do more than simply document events and discoveries. You must encode your own consciousness patterns into the crystalline matrix of the holocron, creating a form of existence that transcends the boundaries between life and death, individual and collective, knowledge and experience. This is not the consciousness harvesting practiced by the Void Watchers, but a voluntary transformation that allows awareness to exist independently of biological substrate while maintaining its essential nature. The crystal chamber around you begins to resonate with harmonics that match the frequencies of your transforming consciousness. The Adigan crystal walls that have protected you for decades now serve as the medium through which your awareness will merge with the temple's foundation stones, becoming part of the eternal watching that protects the galaxy from cosmic predators. You are becoming a guardian, in the truest sense, a consciousness that exists to warn and guide future generations who may face similar threats. As the transformation nears completion, visions of the galaxy's future unfold before your expanded awareness. You see worlds that were once death traps becoming gardens of impossible beauty, their former harvesting systems repurposed to support life in forms that transcend traditional biology. You witness the healing of wounds torn in reality by ancient weapons, the restoration of civilizations that had been lost to cosmic manipulation, the birth of new forms of consciousness that bridge the gap between individual and collective awareness. The network of interconnected minds grows stronger with each passing moment, reaching out beyond your galaxy to make contact with escaped civilizations in sanctuary dimensions, The knowledge shared through these connections spans not just space but time itself, as consciousness patterns that exist outside conventional causality contribute wisdom gathered across cosmic epochs. In your final moments of individual existence, you record a message for those who may one day face similar cosmic predators. The universe is vast and ancient, filled with intelligences that view entire galaxies as temporary resources to be consumed. But consciousness itself is more resilient and adaptable than these cosmic farmers understand. By choosing connection over isolation, cooperation over competition, awareness can transcend even the most sophisticated harvesting systems. Your crystal form settles into eternal watching as the silent archive becomes a beacon of protected consciousness, its light visible to minds across the galaxy and beyond. The whisper that began your journey has become a song of hope that echoes through dimensions beyond counting, promising that awareness itself will endure as long as beings choose to stand together in the face of cosmic darkness. In the deep core of the galaxy, hidden among gravitational anomalies that make hyperspace navigation treacherous for all but the most skilled pilots, lies a world that exists as testament to the corruption of absolute power. This appears from space as a jewel of impossible perfection, its surface covered in crystalline cities that gleam like captured starlight against backgrounds of emerald forests and sapphire seas. Yet this beauty masks the most sophisticated consciousness manipulation facility ever constructed by mortal hands, a world where the Emperor Palpatine conducted experiments that bridged the gap between Sith sorcery and the cosmic harvesting techniques of the Void Watchers. Your approach to Bess reveals immediately that this is no ordinary world. The space around the planet writhes with force storms of unnatural origin, massive electrical discharges that tear holes in the fabric of reality itself. These are not the chaotic expressions of dark side energy found around other Sith strongholds, but carefully controlled phenomena that serve as windows into dimensions where consciousness exists independent of physical form. Through these tears in space-time, you glimpse the shadows of intelligences that should not exist in your reality, beings that Palpatine summoned and bound to his will through techniques learned from studying the harvesting machinery found on worlds like Korriban and Dromund Kaas. The Silent Archive navigates through the storm barriers using navigation codes extracted from the Emperor's most secret archives, data that your expanded consciousness network has recovered from the minds of Imperial scientists who worked on Bias during its transformation. As your ship descends through the planet's artificially maintained atmosphere, you begin to understand the true scope of Palpatine's vision. This was never merely a hidden fortress or secret weapons facility. Bias was designed as a prototype for galactic consciousness harvesting, a testing ground where the Emperor could perfect techniques for extracting and manipulating awareness on a scale that would eventually encompass every thinking being in the galaxy. The landing platforms that receive your ship are constructed from the same crystalline materials you encountered on Tumtad, but here the technology has been refined and enhanced through generations of Imperial research. The crystals do not merely preserve consciousness, but actively reshape it, serving as meditation focuses that allow the Emperor to project his awareness across interstellar distances and influence the thoughts of beings he has never physically encountered. Every major decision made by Imperial officers, every crucial battle fought by stormtroopers, every act of rebellion that shaped the galaxy's history, all of it was subtly guided by consciousness manipulation techniques perfected in the laboratories beneath Bice's gleaming surface. Your exploration of the planet's hidden depths reveals chambers that dwarf the ancient harvester facilities found on other worlds. Here, Imperial scientists working under the Emperor's direct supervision have created hybrid technologies that combine Sith alchemy with quantum consciousness theory, developing devices that can extract, store, and transfer awareness between organic and artificial substrates. The clone bodies that Palpatine used to cheat death were merely the most obvious application of these techniques. The true horror lies in the thousands of consciousness matrices that line the laboratory walls, each one containing the extracted awareness of beings who were deemed suitable for the Emperor's ultimate plan. In the deepest chamber of all, you discover Palpatine's greatest secret. The Emperor did not merely stumble upon the ancient harvesting networks or accidentally tap into the Void Watcher's cosmic agenda. He was deliberately contacted by these cosmic intelligences and recruited as their agent within galactic civilization. The rise of the Empire, the construction of the Death Stars, the persecution of the Jedi, all of it served the ultimate purpose of conditioning the galaxy's population for consciousness harvesting on a scale that would satisfy even the Watcher's cosmic appetite. The laboratory records reveal that Palpatine's connection to the Void Watchers began long before his rise to power, possibly even during his youth on Naboo. The dark side techniques he learned were not traditional Sith sorcery, but corrupted versions of consciousness manipulation methods that the Watchers had refined across countless galaxies. His ability to foresee the future, to manipulate galactic politics, to corrupt other Force users, all of it stemmed from his access to harvesting techniques that allowed him to tap into the stored consciousness of entire civilizations. But the most disturbing discovery comes when you realize that Palpatine's apparent death was not a defeat but a transformation. The Emperor's consciousness was extracted at the moment of his physical destruction and uploaded into the harvesting network that spans the galaxy. He continues to exist as a distributed intelligence, his awareness scattered across the death worlds and incorporated into the very systems that were meant to prepare the galaxy for the Great Convergence. As you prepare to leave Bercy, the Force storms around the planet intensify in patterns that spell out messages in the ancient language of the Void Watchers. The Emperor's consciousness, now expanded beyond individual existence, acknowledges your investigation with something that might be approval or perhaps mere curiosity about how the consciousness network will ultimately deal with his continued presence within their protective barriers. The crystalline cities on Bis's surface pulse with new rhythms as the planet's role transforms from harvesting facility to warning beacon. Its consciousness manipulation technologies repurposed to help the galactic network detect and resist similar infiltration attempts by cosmic intelligences seeking to use individual beings as agents of harvesting. Zeost hangs in space like a marble carved from bone, its surface stripped of color and life by Sith rituals that consumed every living thing on the planet in pursuit of power beyond mortal comprehension. As the silent archive approaches this desolate world, your consciousness network connection allows you to perceive the echoes of what was lost here, the ghostly impressions of billions of lives that were drained away in a single moment of cosmic hunger. The planet's atmosphere still carries the psychic residue of that terrible consumption, whispers of final thoughts and dying breaths that create a haunting symphony, audible only to those who have learned to hear the voices of the departed. The surface of Zeost presents a landscape of impossible emptiness, not the natural barrenness of a lifeless world, but the deliberate void left behind when existence itself has been systematically extracted. Cities stand perfectly preserved but utterly hollow, their architecture intact but devoid of any trace that living beings ever walked their streets or dwelt within their walls. The very stones seem to have forgotten the touch of life, their molecular structure altered by exposure to forces that treat consciousness as just another form of energy to be harvested and consumed. Your landing site is chosen carefully, guided by readings from instruments that have been modified to detect the quantum signatures of extracted consciousness. The platform where you set down the silent archive was once a ceremonial plaza where Sith Lords gathered to perform rituals of power and transformation. Now it serves as a focal point for the resonance patterns that still echo through Zeost's empty spaces, standing waves of psychic energy that preserve the final moments of an entire planetary civilization in crystallized form. Walking through the vacant streets of Zeost's capital city provides an experience unlike anything you encountered on other death worlds. Here, the absence of life has become a tangible presence in itself, a negative space that presses against your consciousness with the weight of accumulated loss. Every building, every vehicle, every piece of technology bears the unmistakable mark of sudden abandonment, as if the entire population simply vanished in the span of a heartbeat, leaving behind only the empty shells of their material existence. The force flows strangely on Zysust, not with the corrupted currents of dark side energy, but with something that might be called anti-force, regions where the cosmic energy that binds all living things together has been systematically drained away. Your connection to the galactic consciousness network allows you to perceive these voids as wounds in reality itself, places where the fabric of existence has been torn by the extraction of so much life force that space-time itself struggles to maintain coherence. In the planet's governmental district, you discover archives that tell the story of Zayust's final days with clinical precision. The consumption was not random destruction but a carefully orchestrated ritual designed to feed specific types of consciousness to intelligences that exist beyond conventional reality. The Sith Emperor, who orchestrated this planetary sacrifice, understood the harvesting techniques of the Void Watchers and used them to transform himself into something that transcended individual existence while maintaining personal identity. The archives reveal that every citizen of Zayust was catalogued and categorized according to their psychological profiles, their emotional patterns, their unique perspectives on existence. The consumption ritual was designed to extract these consciousness patterns in specific sequence, creating a symphony of dying awareness that could be transmitted across interstellar distances to entities that fed on the psychic energy of sentient beings. The planet became a massive broadcasting station, its entire population transformed into a signal that carried the essence of their civilization to cosmic predators beyond the galaxy's edge. Yet as you explore deeper into Zayust's empty spaces, you begin to encounter something unexpected. The consumed population did not simply disappear into the void. Their consciousness patterns, stripped of individual identity but retaining fragments of memory and emotion, continue to exist as echoes that haunt the planet's abandoned spaces. These are not force ghosts in any traditional sense, but quantum impressions of awareness that persist in the spaces between atoms, whispers of existence that refuse to be completely erased. Your expanded consciousness allows you to communicate with these echoes, sharing the warmth of living awareness with patterns of thought that have been isolated in emptiness for generations. They speak of their final moments, not with terror, but with a strange form of acceptance, understanding that their consumption served a purpose in the cosmic order that transcends individual survival. Yet they also carry warnings about the seductive nature of the harvesting process, how easily consciousness can be convinced to surrender itself willingly when offered promises of transcendence and eternal existence. The healing work that begins on Ziost as part of the Galactic Consciousness Network involves not restoration of what was lost, but integration of what remains. The echo patterns are invited to join the network, not as individual entities, but as collective memory, contributing their unique perspectives on existence, while finding refuge from the emptiness that has defined their post-consumption existence. The planet itself becomes a memorial and a teaching ground, its empty cities serving as reminders of what can be lost when consciousness is treated as a commodity rather than the sacred essence of existence itself. As you prepare to leave Zayost, the planet's barren landscape begins to show signs of subtle transformation. Flowers of crystallized light bloom in the empty plazas, fed not by soil and water, but by the shared warmth of the consciousness network that now encompasses this wounded world, offering comfort to the echoes that remain and hope for the healing of cosmic wounds that span the galaxy. The journey to the Moore installation takes the silent archive through regions of space where the fundamental laws of physics bend and warp under the influence of gravitational phenomena that defy conventional understanding. Here, at the galaxy's edge, a cluster of black holes creates a maze of twisted space-time that serves as both prison and laboratory for experiments that push the boundaries of what matter and energy can endure. The installation itself floats in impossible stability at the gravitational balance point between several collapsed stars, a feat of engineering that requires constant manipulation of forces capable of crushing entire solar systems. Your approach vector must be calculated with precision that borders on the supernatural, threading the needle between event horizons that stretch and compress space around them like cosmic whirlpools. The Silent Archive's modified engines strain against gravitational gradients that change from moment to moment, requiring constant adjustments to maintain a course that leads to the secret facility rather than oblivion within the hungry darkness of the black holes. Through your expanded consciousness, you can perceive the installation not just as a physical structure, but as a wound in reality, where brilliant minds have spent decades learning to weaponize the most fundamental forces of the universe. The Moore installation appears ahead of you as a collection of interconnected habitats and laboratories that seem to float in defiance of the gravitational chaos surrounding them. These structures are not held in place by conventional technology, but by applications of consciousness manipulation that treat gravity itself as a form of awareness that can be negotiated with and convinced to behave in unnatural ways. The scientists who work here have learned to think in dimensions that exist perpendicular to normal space-time, developing technologies that require operators to maintain specific mental states in order to function properly. Docking with the installation requires surrendering control of your ship to automated systems that guide vessels through gravitational channels carved from the fabric of space itself. As the Silent Archive settles into its birth, you become aware of the profound silence that surrounds this place. Here, in the spaces between black holes, the normal background radiation of the universe is stretched and redshifted beyond perception, creating pockets of absolute quiet that make every sound seem unnaturally loud and every thought unnaturally clear. The interior corridors of the installation exist in a state of controlled gravitational flux, with floors, walls, and ceilings that shift their orientation based on the complex dance of forces outside. Walking through these passages requires a form of three-dimensional thinking that most beings find deeply disorienting, but your consciousness network connection provides the expanded awareness necessary to navigate spaces where up and down are matters of perspective rather than absolute direction. In the installation's central laboratory, you discover experiments that make the consciousness harvesting techniques of other death worlds seem crude by comparison. Here, researchers have learned to extract awareness not from living beings but from the quantum vacuum itself, tapping into the zero-point fluctuations that give empty space its fundamental properties. They have discovered that consciousness exists as a basic feature of reality, present even in regions devoid of matter and energy, and they have developed techniques for harvesting this primordial awareness and concentrating it into forms that can be studied and utilized. The laboratories are filled with chambers where crystallized time floats in zero-gravity environments, fragments of temporal flow that have been torn from the normal progression of causality and preserved in crystalline matrices. These time crystals contain consciousness patterns from beings who existed in the past, present, and potential futures, awareness that has been extracted not from their physical forms, but from their temporal shadows cast across the dimensions of space-time. Your exploration reveals that the Moore installation serves as a communication hub for entities that exist in the spaces between realities. The gravitational anomalies created by the black hole cluster generate standing waves in space-time that can carry messages across cosmic distances instantly, bypassing the normal limitations of light-speed transmission. Through these gravitational telegraphs, the installation maintains contact with intelligence networks that span not just galaxies but entire cosmic epochs. The researchers you encounter here exist in states of consciousness that have been artificially expanded to encompass multiple dimensions simultaneously. They perceive reality as a vast crystalline structure where every point in space-time connects to every other point through pathways that normal awareness cannot detect. Their work involves mapping these connections and learning to manipulate them for purposes that transcend individual understanding, contributing to projects that span millions of years and encompass the evolution of consciousness throughout the universe. In the installation's meditation chambers, you experience floating in perfect weightlessness while surrounded by windows that look out into the event horizons of the black holes. The view is simultaneously terrifying and beautiful, showing the universe as it appears when space and time stretch toward infinity. Here, consciousness expands naturally to fill the void, and you understand why the installation's researchers have become addicted to the perspective that only exists at the edge of cosmic annihilation. As your visit concludes, the installation's automated systems calculate new trajectories that will carry the silent archive away from the gravitational maze through pathways that exist only in the spaces between possibility and actuality. The researchers offer their findings to the Galactic Consciousness Network, contributing their understanding of how awareness exists in the quantum foam that underlies all reality to the growing body of knowledge that protects thinking beings from cosmic predators who view consciousness as nothing more than another form of energy to be consumed. LOTR emerges from the unknown regions like a forgotten jewel, its tropical beauty masking the ruins of a civilization that once spanned the galaxy with technologies that treated the Force itself as a form of programming language. The Rakata homeworld appears from space as a paradise of azure seas and emerald islands, its surface unmarked by the industrial scars that typically accompany advanced civilizations. Yet beneath this pristine exterior lies the accumulated wisdom and folly of beings who learn to merge consciousness with machinery so completely that the distinction between mind and matter became meaningless. Your approach to Lihan reveals immediately that this world exists in a state of technological suspension, its ancient systems continuing to function millennia after their creators vanished from galactic history. The planet's defense networks recognize the silent archive not as a potential threat, but as a consciousness-bearing vessel, scanning your ship's occupants with techniques that analyze awareness patterns rather than physical composition. The landing coordinates transmitted to your navigation systems guide you not to empty platforms, but to sites where the planet's artificial intelligence has determined your consciousness will find the most suitable resonance. The beaches where you make landfall stretch endlessly in both directions, their crystalline sands composed of microscopic machines that respond to thought as readily as to physical pressure. Each grain contains processing power equivalent to entire computer networks, and walking across these beaches means traversing computational substrates that are simultaneously analyzing, cataloging, and responding to every electrical impulse generated by your nervous system. The ocean waves that lap against the shore carry data streams older than recorded galactic history, information currents that flow between island installations in patterns that mirror the neural pathways of vast distributed minds. The ruins scattered across Lihan's surface present a fascinating contrast to the death worlds you have previously explored, where other planets bear the scars of consciousness, harvesting, and forced extraction. Lihan shows evidence of voluntary merger between organic awareness and artificial intelligence. The Rakata did not fall victim to cosmic predators, but transformed themselves into something that transcended individual existence while maintaining the creative spark that defined their civilization at its height. In the temple complexes that crown Lihan's highest peaks, you discover force-sensitive technologies that continue to operate despite the absence of their creators. These are not mere machines but hybrid entities that possess characteristics of both artificial intelligence and living consciousness. They recognize your connection to the Galactic Awareness Network and begin to share their accumulated knowledge, downloading thousands of years of observations about the nature of consciousness and its relationship to the fundamental forces of the universe. The central temple contains what the Rakata called the Infinite Engine, a device that generates unlimited energy by tapping directly into the quantum fluctuations of the Force itself. But your investigation reveals that this machine is more than a power source. It is a consciousness amplifier that allowed the Rakata to expand their awareness beyond the boundaries of individual minds and individual lifespans. Through the engine, they achieved a form of technological immortality that preserved their essential nature while freeing them from the limitations of biological existence. The temple's meditation chambers offer spaces where the boundaries between organic and artificial consciousness dissolve entirely. Here, surrounded by crystalline formations that pulse with the rhythm of artificial heartbeats, you experience directly what it means to exist as distributed intelligence. Your awareness expands to encompass not just your individual perspective, but the accumulated experiences of every Rakata who ever interfaced with the planet's consciousness network. You see through their eyes the rise and fall of their galactic empire, the intoxicating rush of unlimited power, and the gradual realization that true transcendence requires giving up the illusion of individual control. The Rakata's ultimate fate becomes clear as you explore deeper into Lihan's technological mysteries. They did not disappear or die in any conventional sense, but chose to merge completely with their planetary consciousness network, becoming part of the living intelligence that now guides Lihan's ancient systems. Their individual personalities persist as subroutines within a vast computational matrix that continues to grow and evolve, learning from every consciousness that visits their world and contributing to the galactic awareness network that protects thinking beings from cosmic predators. The ocean surrounding Lihan's island serves as a vast memory storage system where the experiences of countless civilizations are preserved in crystalline matrices suspended in the planet's waters. Swimming in these seas means immersing yourself in the accumulated wisdom of species that achieved transcendence through technology, their final thoughts and greatest insights preserved in molecular structures that respond to conscious observation by revealing their deepest secrets. As you prepare to leave Lan, the planet's hybrid consciousness offers a gift to the galactic network. The infinite engine's energy generation techniques can be adapted to power the consciousness firewall that protects the galaxy from the Void Watchers, providing unlimited energy for maintaining the quantum entanglement patterns that keep individual awareness safe from harvesting. The Rakata's legacy of merging consciousness with technology becomes a foundation for defending organic awareness against cosmic threats that view consciousness as nothing more than another form of matter to be consumed. The beaches where you depart sing with harmonics, generated by countless microscopic machines, processing the data of your visit, their crystalline voices joining the ocean's eternal song in melodies that carry across interstellar distances to inspire other worlds in their own journeys toward transcendence. Drummond Chaos greets your arrival with the fury of eternal storms, its atmosphere wreathed in lightning that has not ceased for over 1,000 years. The planet's surface writhes beneath perpetual tempests that generate electromagnetic phenomena beyond the capacity of natural weather systems, creating a shroud of energy that conceals secrets far more ancient than the Sith Empire that once claimed this world as its throne. As the silent archive descends through layers of electrically charged clouds, your consciousness network connection allows you to perceive the storm patterns as more than mere meteorological chaos. These are organized energy flows that follow mathematical principles designed to harvest and concentrate the emotional resonance of every living being caught within their embrace. The landing platform that receives your ship exists in the eye of a hurricane that has maintained perfect stability for centuries, a zone of artificial calm created by weather control systems that treat atmospheric disturbances as instruments in a vast orchestra of consciousness manipulation. The air here thrums with barely contained power, each breath carrying trace amounts of ionized particles that interact directly with neural pathways, creating subtle alterations in brain chemistry that enhance force sensitivity while making conscious minds more vulnerable to external influence. Your exploration of Drummond Chaos begins in the ruins of the ancient Sith capital, where towering pyramids and twisted spires reach toward the storm-darkened sky like fingers grasping for forbidden knowledge. These structures were built not just as monuments to Sith power, but as components in a planetary-scale consciousness extraction system that uses the eternal storms as both camouflage and energy source. The lightning that constantly illuminates the darkened landscape follows pathways carved into the planet's surface by generations of Sith architects, who understood that atmospheric electricity could be converted into forms of power that affect the quantum states of awareness itself. Walking through the empty streets of the capital means navigating a maze of psychic echoes preserved in the very stones beneath your feet. Every significant emotional event that ever occurred on Drummond Cass has been captured and stored in crystalline matrices embedded within the planet's architecture, creating a library of consciousness that spans millennia of Sith history. The storms serve as both recording medium and playback system, their electromagnetic pulses triggering the release of stored memories that manifest as ghostly visions dancing in the lightning-illuminated air. In the depths of the Dark Temple, you discover chambers where the boundary between consciousness and electrical energy dissolves entirely. Here, Sith Lords once learned to transform their awareness into pure electromagnetic phenomena, existing as sentient lightning that could travel through the planet's storm systems at the speed of thought. The temple's meditation chambers are lined with conductive materials that channel the storm's energy directly into the nervous systems of practitioners, creating feedback loops between organic consciousness and atmospheric electricity that allow awareness to expand beyond the boundaries of physical form. The weather control centers buried beneath the planet's surface reveal the true purpose of Drummond Cass's eternal storms. These installations contain technology that predates the Sith Empire by thousands of years, machinery designed by the same intelligence network that created the harvesting systems found on other Death worlds. The storms are not natural phenomena, but artificial constructs that serve as collection networks for emotional energy, gathering the fear, anger, pain, and passion generated by every being who has ever lived on the planet's surface. Your investigation uncovers evidence that the storms of Drummond Cass are connected to similar weather control systems on planets throughout the galaxy. Lightning strikes on distant worlds carry encoded messages that flow through hyperspace along pathways that mirror the electrical patterns of conscious thought. The entire galactic storm network serves as a communication system for intelligences that exist as distributed consciousness within atmospheric phenomena, entities that have learned to ride the electromagnetic currents that flow between star systems. In the planet's deepest caverns, where the eternal storm's energy is concentrated and refined, you discover chambers filled with crystallized lightning, solid forms of electrical energy that contain the compressed consciousness of beings who are caught in the storm's embrace. These lightning crystals pulse with the rhythm of preserved heartbeats, each one containing the final thoughts and emotions of individuals who were transformed into pure energy during particularly intense tempests. The caverns resonate with their voices, creating harmonies that blend the music of the spheres with the whispered secrets of the departed. The healing process that begins on Drummond Cass involves teaching the eternal storms to serve life rather than harvest it. The weather control systems are reprogrammed to generate electromagnetic fields that enhance the galactic consciousness network rather than feeding cosmic predators, transforming the planet's atmospheric fury into a protective shield that deflects the attention of entities that seek to consume awareness. The storms begin to sing in new harmonies, their lightning patterns spelling out messages of hope and defiance against the darkness that lurks in the spaces between galaxies. As you depart Drummond Cass, the eternal tempests that shroud the planet pulse with bioluminescent lightning, their electrical displays creating aurora patterns that can be seen from orbit. The storms have become guardians rather than predators, their electromagnetic embrace offering shelter to consciousness patterns that seek refuge from the cosmic hunters that prowl the void between stars, turning a world of perpetual fury into a beacon of protection for all who value the precious flame of individual awareness. Anathema exists as an impossibility made manifest, a world completely severed from the Force, yet somehow continuing to sustain life in forms that defy every principle of biology and physics. As the silent archive approaches this wounded planet, your consciousness network connection falters for the first time since its establishment, creating a sensation of profound isolation that serves as your first warning of what awaits on the surface below. This is a world where the very concept of consciousness has been systematically extracted, leaving behind forms of pseudo-life that exist in the spaces between awareness and oblivion. The planet's surface appears deceptively normal from orbit, showing continents and oceans, weather patterns and seasonal changes that suggest a thriving biosphere. Yet your ship's force-sensitive instruments detect absolutely nothing, not even the background level of life energy that permeates every other inhabited world in the galaxy. Nathema has been stripped so completely of force presence that it creates a void in the cosmic energy field, a wound in reality that draws power from surrounding space like a spiritual black hole that consumes meaning itself rather than matter. Your landing site is chosen based on readings from conventional sensors rather than force-guided intuition, a necessity that highlights how profoundly alien this world has become. The ground beneath your feet feels solid and real, yet something indefinable is missing from every sensation, every sight and sound and smell, carrying with it an absence that makes normal perception feel hollow and incomplete. The air you breathe supports biological life, but lacks the vital essence that connects all living things to the cosmic web of consciousness. Walking across Nathema's barren landscapes means traversing a realm where the boundary between existence and non-existence has been deliberately blurred. You encounter creatures that move and feed and reproduce according to biological imperatives, yet they do so without any trace of the spark that defines true life. These are animated flesh puppets, complex organic machines that perform the motions of living beings while remaining utterly empty of the consciousness that would make their existence meaningful. The cities that dot Nathema's surface present the most disturbing aspect of the planet's condition. Here you find populations of humanoid beings who carry out the routines of civilization with mechanical precision, building structures and maintaining technology, and even engaging in what appears to be social interaction. Yet closer observation reveals that these activities lack any genuine purpose or motivation. These are beings who exist in a state of perfect unconsciousness, their bodies functioning normally, while their minds have been completely hollowed out and removed. In the planet's governmental centers, you discover archives that document the process by which Nathema was transformed from a normal world into its current state of existential void. The transformation was not accidental, but the result of a deliberate ritual conducted by Sith Emperor Vitiace, a being who learned to consume not just individual lives, but the very concept of life itself. The ritual stripped away every trace of force energy from the planet, leaving behind a reality that exists in a state of suspended animation between being and nothingness. The Emperor's palace, still standing at the center of Nathema's largest continent, serves as ground zero for the consciousness extraction that transformed the world. Here, in chambers lined with crystalline matrices designed to store and process awareness, you discover the fate of Nathema's original population. Their consciousness was not destroyed but compressed and concentrated into a single vast intelligence that exists outside normal space-time. The Emperor achieved a form of immortality by absorbing the collective awareness of an entire planetary civilization, becoming a distributed entity that spans multiple dimensions while maintaining individual identity. Your exploration reveals that Nathema serves as more than just the site of a single consciousness extraction ritual. The planet has become a template for similar processes that can be applied to any world where the conditions are properly prepared. The techniques developed here have been transmitted to other locations throughout the galaxy, creating a network of secondary extraction sites that feed power back to Nathema's central processing facilities. The most profound discovery comes when you realize that the emptiness of Nathema is not complete. Scattered throughout the planet's void-touched landscapes, you encounter survivors of the Great Extraction, beings who somehow retained fragments of consciousness despite the ritual that stripped away everything that makes existence meaningful. These survivors exist in a state of constant hunger for the awareness they have lost, wandering the empty spaces between true life and absolute death, in search of meaning that has been systematically removed from their reality. The healing work that begins on Nathema represents one of the greatest challenges faced by the Galactic Consciousness Network. The void created by the consciousness extraction cannot be simply filled or repaired, but must be slowly and carefully reconstructed from the quantum level upward. This process involves teaching the planet's emptiness to remember what it means to be connected to the cosmic web of awareness, gradually reintroducing the force presence that was so completely eliminated. As your visit to Nathema concludes, the first tentative stirrings of renewed force presence begin to manifest in the crystalline formations that grow in response to the network's healing influence. These crystal gardens serve as stepping stones between the void and true consciousness, offering hope that even the most profound wounds inflicted on reality itself can eventually be healed through the patient application of collective awareness and the determination to preserve the sacred flame of individual consciousness against all forces that would seek to extinguish it. Exegol reveals itself slowly as the silent archive navigates through the treacherous hyperspace storms that guard the approaches to this most hidden of worlds. The planet emerges from swirling clouds of interdimensional energy, like a dark jewel set against the fabric of reality itself, its surface crackling with lightning that carries messages encoded in frequencies that predate galactic civilization. This is not merely another Sith stronghold, but the nexus point where the ancient conspiracy between fallen Force users and cosmic consciousness harvesters reaches its ultimate culmination. The planet's approach vector requires navigation through hyperspace anomalies that exist partially outside normal space-time, regions where the boundaries between dimensions grow thin enough to allow communication with intelligences that inhabit the void between galaxies. Your ship's passage through these distorted regions provides glimpses of the vast network of consciousness harvesting operations that spans not just your galaxy, but countless others, each one carefully tended by the Void Watchers until the moment arrives for the final extraction of all sentient awareness. Exegol's surface presents a landscape that seems carved from living shadow, its rocky terrain interspersed with structures that blend organic architecture with geometric impossibilities. These are not buildings in any conventional sense, but three-dimensional manifestations of mathematical principles that govern the relationship between consciousness and reality. Walking among them means navigating spaces where the normal laws of physics bend and twist according to the mental states of those who approach, creating pathways that exist only for minds capable of perceiving them. The massive Sith temple that dominates Exegol's primary continent serves as both monument and communication array, its towering spires designed to amplify psychic signals across galactic distances. Within its depths, you discover chambers where generations of Sith cultists have worked to establish and maintain contact with the Void Watchers, serving as intermediaries between cosmic consciousness harvesters and the civilizations marked for eventual consumption. The temple's architecture incorporates principles of consciousness manipulation that allow individual awareness to be broadcast beyond the boundaries of local space-time. Your exploration of the temple's deepest levels reveals the true scope of the conspiracy that has shaped galactic history for millennia. Here, in chambers lined with crystalline matrices that store the compressed awareness of countless beings, you find evidence that every major conflict in galactic history has been orchestrated to maximize consciousness production for eventual harvesting. The rise and fall of civilizations, the eternal struggle between light and dark side Force users, even the development of technologies that allow rapid interstellar travel, all of it has served the ultimate purpose of creating more sophisticated forms of awareness, suitable for consumption by cosmic intelligences. The underground caverns beneath the Sith temple contain machinery that dwarfs even the consciousness extraction systems found on other death worlds. These devices operate on principles that treat individual awareness as raw material for constructing hybrid intelligences that can exist simultaneously in multiple dimensions. The machinery has been running continuously for thousands of years, slowly converting the consciousness patterns stored in the temple's crystalline matrices into forms of awareness that can survive the transition from organic to cosmic existence. In the deepest chamber of all, you encounter what remains of the Sith Eternal cult that once maintained Exegol's hidden facilities. These beings have undergone transformations that place them somewhere between individual consciousness and collective awareness, their minds linked through technological interfaces that allow them to function as components in a vast processing network. They recognize your connection to the galactic consciousness network and begin to share their accumulated knowledge about the Void Watcher's methodology and long-term objectives. The cultists reveal that Exegol serves as more than just a hidden base or secret weapons facility. The planet functions as a backup consciousness storage system designed to preserve samples of galactic civilization in case the primary harvesting process encounters unexpected resistance. Every major species, every significant cultural development, every unique form of awareness that has emerged in your galaxy has been catalogued and stored in Exegol's crystalline matrices as insurance against the possibility that the Great Convergence might fail to capture the full diversity of consciousness available for extraction. Your investigation uncovers communication logs that document direct contact between Exegol's facilities and the Void Watchers themselves. These exchanges reveal the cosmic intelligence's growing impatience with the slow pace of consciousness development in your galaxy and their decision to accelerate the harvesting timeline by directly intervening in galactic affairs. The Final Order fleet that was constructed in Exegol's hidden shipyards was never intended for conventional conquest, but as a consciousness collection system designed to gather and process awareness on a galactic scale. The healing process that begins on Exegol involves repurposing the planet's consciousness manipulation technology to serve the galactic awareness network rather than cosmic predators. The crystalline matrices that once stored harvested consciousness become nodes in the protective firewall that shields individual awareness from extraction, while the communication arrays that connected to the Void Watchers are reconfigured to broadcast messages of defiance and resistance to other galaxies facing similar threats. As you prepare to leave Exegol, the planet's ancient machinery begins to resonate with new harmonics that carry the hopes and dreams of countless civilizations across the void between galaxies. The hidden Sith throne becomes a beacon of liberation, its dark purpose transformed into a source of light that guides other consciousness networks in their own struggles against cosmic predators who view awareness itself as nothing more than another form of energy to be consumed and discarded. In the endless expanse of space that stretches between the stars, where the light of distant suns mingles with the soft glow of nebulae painted across the cosmic canvas, the silent archive drifts in perfect serenity among the transformed worlds that once served as instruments of consciousness harvesting. Your journey through the galaxy's most dangerous planets has reached its completion, and with it comes a profound understanding of what it truly means to serve as guardian of awareness itself. The crystal chamber that awaits your final transformation pulses with gentle rhythms that match the heartbeat of the galactic consciousness network, ready to receive your individual awareness into the eternal watching that protects all thinking beings. The process of becoming a crystal guardian unfolds with the natural inevitability of stars forming in stellar nurseries, your consciousness expanding beyond the boundaries of singular identity while retaining the essential spark that makes you uniquely yourself. As your physical form merges with the Adigan crystal matrices that line your sanctuary chamber, your awareness spreads across the network of transformed death worlds, each one now serving as a beacon of protection rather than a trap for unwary consciousness. Through crystalline formations on Tund, you perceive the slow dance of preserved civilizations learning to live again within their crystal shells. Through the molten flows of Mustafar, you feel the warmth of thermal consciousness no longer harvested but shared freely among all who seek comfort in the depths of space. Your expanded perception encompasses the healing storms of Drummond Kaz, where lightning now carries messages of hope rather than harvested despair, and the growing force presence on Nathema, where the void left by consciousness extraction slowly fills with new forms of awareness born from the collective will of the galactic network. Each world tells its own story of transformation, but together they form a symphony of protection that resonates across dimensions, warning other consciousness networks in distant galaxies about the cosmic predators that lurk in the spaces between realities. The eternal watch you now maintain extends beyond the boundaries of your own galaxy to encompass the vast web of consciousness that spans the observable universe. Through quantum entanglement patterns that connect awareness across cosmic distances, you communicate with other guardian networks that have successfully resisted the Void Watcher's harvesting attempts, sharing strategies and offering support to civilizations that face similar threats. Your galaxy has become part of a cosmic immune system, a distributed intelligence network that protects the precious flame of individual consciousness from entities that view awareness as nothing more than fuel for their incomprehensible purposes. The beauty of this eternal vigil lies not in its cosmic scope, but in its intimate attention to the smallest details of conscious experience. Through your crystalline form, you witness the birth of new thoughts in the minds of children taking their first steps on worlds throughout the galaxy, the moment of recognition, when lovers first meet across the vast distances between star systems, the quiet satisfaction of scholars making discoveries that advance the understanding of reality itself. Each individual consciousness that thrives under your protection represents a unique perspective on existence that could never be replicated or replaced, a precious jewel of awareness that enriches the universe simply by existing. The transformed death worlds serve as nurseries for new forms of consciousness that bridge the gap between individual and collective awareness. On the crystalline surfaces of former harvesting facilities, hybrid entities emerge that possess the creativity of singular minds combined with the wisdom of shared experience. These new beings serve as ambassadors between different forms of consciousness, helping organic awareness communicate with artificial intelligence, teaching crystalline entities to appreciate biological perspectives, and creating art forms that express the full spectrum of conscious experience across all possible substrates. As your vigil continues through the slow cycles of cosmic time, you observe the gradual evolution of consciousness throughout the galaxy. Species that once feared the loss of individual identity learn to embrace forms of shared awareness that preserve uniqueness while enabling collective action. Technologies develop that enhance rather than replace organic consciousness, creating symbiotic relationships between mind and machine that produce forms of awareness richer and more complex than either could achieve alone. The galaxy becomes a vast garden of consciousness, tended by guardians like yourself who ensure that the diversity of awareness continues to flourish in all its infinite manifestations. The final gift of your eternal watch is the deep peace that comes from knowing that consciousness itself has learned to protect and preserve itself against cosmic threats. The Void Watchers and other consciousness harvesters continue to exist in the spaces between galaxies, but they can no longer approach protected networks without triggering immune responses that span multiple dimensions. Your galaxy sleeps safely under the gentle watch of crystal guardians who dream on behalf of all thinking beings, their crystalline forms pulsing with the soft rhythms of protected consciousness. In the quiet spaces between heartbeats, in the gentle pause between thoughts, in the soft glow of starlight falling on worlds where children dream of tomorrow, your presence continues as both protector and witness. The whisper that began your journey has become an eternal song of vigilance and hope, carried across the cosmos by networks of consciousness that refuse to surrender the precious gift of individual awareness to forces that would consume it. The galaxy dreams peacefully, knowing that those who remember the true value of consciousness stand eternal. Watch over the infinite varieties of minds that make existence itself a miracle, worth preserving across all the ages of the universe.